Okay, so welcome everybody to our webinar on getting started with CREST for secondary teachers. My name is Caris. I'm an education officer here at the BSA, and I've got my colleagues with me, Christine and Susan, who are here to help answer your questions if you have any. So the CREST Awards should inspire young people to think and behave like scientists and engineers. CREST projects are open-ended and student-led, using an inquiry-based learning approach with real-world contexts. They can be used to enhance UCAS applications and CVs and give young people something to discuss in interviews, both for jobs or university places. CREST Awards should be flexible and accessible, and they recognise the achievement of all learners with certificates. And the link at the bottom there is just for the CREST Awards website, where you can find out more about them. So CREST projects should give you and your students the opportunity to be creative and investigate something that interests you. For example, some real CREST project questions are included here, such as can soggy crisps be made crispy again? How does a slinky defy gravity? Can Red Bull really make you fly? To eat or not to eat, the 5-second rule. Does time fly when you're having fun? Or is there a science behind baby holding? So as I was saying, CREST is really flexible, and projects can look into a variety of topics with a scientific approach. So this is the big list of subject areas that we accept projects in, and you'll notice there's even an other option, so you really can investigate any subject. For CREST Awards, we offer 6 award levels, 4 of which are most suitable for secondary. Starting with Discovery, this is typically for 10 to 14-year-olds. It takes 5 hours or can be done in 1 day. It is assessed by an educator, so you as the teacher, before you submit for the certificates, and it costs £3 per student. Then we have the Bronze Awards. These are typically done by students aged 11 or older. They take up to 10 hours of work. Again, these are assessed by you as their teacher, but for this submission, you need to provide a sample of 10% of the student's work. So if you did that with 30 students, that would be providing 3 students' work, for example. And this costs £5 per student. Then we have the Silver Awards. These are typically done by students aged 14 or older. It's approximately 30 hours of work involved, and these are assessed by the expert CREST assessors. So you submit the work that the student has done in the online platform, it is assessed, and then you'll find out if it was successful in achieving an award or not, and this costs £10 per student. And then we have the Gold Awards, typically done by students aged 16 or older. This takes 70 hours of work approximately. Again, like Silver, is assessed by the expert CREST assessors, so you submit the work and then it's assessed, and this costs £20 per student. Just to note that all ages given here are simply a guideline. You can do any award with any age, and you should choose the award that you think is most suitable for your students. Those prices given are for the UK, but that for Wales, CREST is free because it's subsidised by the Welsh Government. And do please note that the fees will be increasing for Bronze, Silver and Gold from January 2025. And I've just popped a link in there, which when you've got the slides, you'll be able to have a look at, which has a bit more information on that. And also just that funding is available for CREST, and I will explain that in a bit more detail in a moment. So if you're thinking about running CREST Awards, there's some different ways in which you can do that. You may want to run CREST Awards during your science lessons in curriculum time. You may want to do so in a science club. It could be part of an online science club or set for homework. If you're doing something more like Discovery, which can be done in a day, or Bronze, which is a shorter project, you may want to do those during British Science Week, which this academic year is going to be the 7th to the 16th of March 2025. Particularly again, that Discovery Award could be done during a STEM day, or those for sort of older students, it could be an independent project that they do in their own time. And I've put a link here with the QR code. This is to a booklet with lots of information about how you can use practical science in the curriculum and sort of CREST projects. So when trying to decide if you'd rather do CREST in curriculum time or as an extracurricular project, I've put here some pros and cons for each. So for during the curriculum, some of the pros, it has lots of skills and team working opportunities for students to build on. It can be fun and impactful. You can then do it with a whole class or even a whole year group. And it helps boost science capital. Some of the cons of doing it in curriculum time, there's sort of additional planning involved. You may need to limit the project themes a bit to make sure it's covering core curriculum content. There is some admin involved and uploads, especially if you're doing it with larger groups, and space may be a challenge, again, if you're doing it with larger groups. If you're doing it as an extracurricular project, some of the pros is you then will likely be working with smaller groups, so we'll have a bit less admin. It'll give you more time supporting individuals, and you'll be able to do a wider range of projects. But some of the cons, each session is likely going to be shorter. You have to think through how to fit that into the academic year. You know, how many sessions does your extracurricular time have? Not all students will necessarily get the opportunity to be involved, and you're going to have to be planning for different sessions or different weeks. So a quick overview of the CREST award process. There's a link at the bottom there to the secondary getting started guide, which covers this in a lot more detail. But the general steps are start by planning how you want to run your CREST awards. So thinking about who do you want to do the awards? Is there a certain class or year group, or is it specific students? This will then help you also decide which level of award you want to do. Then thinking about sort of where and when will you be doing them? You know, is that a STEM club? Is it in lesson time? Is it during science week or across multiple terms? And also thinking about how you'll be covering the CREST award fees. Do you need to get permission for these? Will you be applying for funding, or is there any additional equipment you might need to purchase in order to do your CREST awards? Then you'll need to sort of choose your projects. There's lots of free resources available to download from the CREST resource library, which is linked on the slides, or you can create your own projects or let your students choose something that interests them. Then in order to achieve the awards, you need to run those projects with your students and then apply for your certificates online. For Discovery and Bronze, as I mentioned earlier, you assess your students' work, and for Bronze, you need to upload that 10% sample. Whereas for Silver and Gold, you need to upload each project, and then the expert CREST assessors will review these. If the awards are successful, you'll be sent the certificates in the post. If not, you get sent feedback, and you have the opportunity to resubmit those awards. Just a few things you may want to consider if you're thinking about planning for CREST. So again, as we kind of mentioned, the time and when you're going to do it and what time you have in order to run it, what preparation you'll need to do. Are there any approvals you need from other members of staff or senior leadership? Do you have the space, or what space will you be working in? Do you need any additional materials or equipment? Thinking about, again, when you're going to be running those, taking account of exam times or UCAS deadlines to think of a good time of year to do the CREST Awards. Thinking through staffing, do you need to get other members of staff involved? Will you need to organise cover for yourself or for other members of staff? Any paperwork you need to do, the budget as we mentioned, and any risk assessment you may need to do for different kinds of projects. So I'm going to cover a little bit about the Discovery Awards in more detail. So in Discovery Awards, so these were the ones that are typically for 10 to 14-year-olds. Students work in teams to learn about a topic, then they develop their own idea and present their findings before reflecting on their learning. So the objectives that you'd be assessing the students against are whether they've shown self-management, team working, problem solving, research, communication, and reflective practice skills. I've put some useful links in here for when you've got the slides. So there's a Discovery Getting Started guide, which should have everything you need to know about the Discovery Awards in it, a link to how you would assess the Discovery projects, as well as a link with more information on how you create a Discovery project in the online platform, so how you would apply for your certificates. So an example of a Discovery project, one from our resource library, is Machines of the Future. So in this, pupils learn about AI and machine learning. They have to think about what tasks would they trust a machine to do, and learn how machine learning works. They then work in their groups to design a household product that uses machine learning before presenting their ideas to you in the class. And you can just see on the screen there some of the resources that you can download for free. So that's the Machines of the Future teacher pack, so all the information for you on what you need to know to run that. The student pack with all the instructions for the student, and a little presentation that you can deliver that introduces the project. Once that project is complete, the students use a CREST Discovery Passport to reflect on their learning, which is shown here, and then you can use that to assess their work, and once you've done so, order and award their certificates. So with the CREST Discovery Award, it takes about 5 hours, so that could be run as a STEM day, or it could be done as 5 individual sessions. So benefits of doing that as a STEM day, you have better continuity and opportunity to work on a real world issue with more time to devote for planning and analysis. It also allows time for reflective practice on what was done, and that can be done sort of immediately while it's still fresh in the students' minds. Whereas if you do 5 individual sessions, they're shorter, so it might be easier to keep your students engaged. You can still link one session to the following one, and it may be more convenient for you to run it that way. So I have included here the timings for running a discovery day as a one-day project or as the 5 separate sessions. And this shows the example of the Machines of the Future project. I'm not going to go through this in detail now, but you'll have the slides if that's something you want to look into. Now I'm going to talk a bit more about the bronze, silver and gold awards. So these are assessed against the CREST criteria, and students must meet 11 of the 15 CREST criteria to achieve an award. I've included those criteria there on the right-hand side, but they might be a little bit small, but you will get these slides. There is a student profile form. This is different to that Discovery Passport I showed. That's a form that the students fill in that really shows how or where they've met each criteria. So they might explain there how they've met it, or they might say, in the work I did for my project, I showed this criteria on page 2, paragraph 3, for example. The 15 criteria are the same for all levels of award, but sort of the detail required from the student, there's sort of more detail and more expected as the levels increase. And there are some links there to guidance for each level. Those include sort of a description of how to meet each criterion, as well as an example of how that could be met in a project. So there's no set format for CREST projects. They just need to meet those criteria, but we find that CREST projects often fall into one of these types. So we have practical investigations. These are generally the most common project types we get for CREST. In these, students aim to answer a question, hypothesis, or problem. So for example here, which exercises are most effective in maintaining mental health? We also see design and make projects, which can be both real or digital. So in these, students design and create a product that meets a specific aim. Some examples we've had include designing and making a skateboard, a model catamaran, or AI glasses. We also have research projects, which are more like a literature style review. In this, students aim to provide a fresh perspective or strengthen an argument for a disputed STEM topic through gathering data and analysis. So an example here, genetic and societal factors that contribute towards obesity. Or we also see communication projects. In these, students aim to inform a specific audience about a topic or raise their awareness and interest in STEM. So some past projects we've seen included students developing a science show, building an interactive museum exhibit that explained a scientific principle, a radio show where students interviewed a scientist, or the one shown here, a podcast series on the accuracy of science in films. So try to decide what you want to do your CREST project on, whether that's you as the teacher choosing for a class or students deciding for themselves. CREST really gives you a great opportunity to use the interests of the young people you work with to sort of get them hooked and interested in the curriculum content that you're trying to teach. So where you can make your own powerful questions for students, start by thinking about which students you want to work with. So picking a year group that you think would benefit from doing more project work. Then try and make a list of their interests. So these are the things they're interested in outside of school, not curriculum content, but what do they like? What are they talking about? Then think of a curriculum topic you're due to be teaching them and try and list as much of the curriculum content as you can. Now you're going to draw lines between that curriculum content and your hook list, the things they're interested in, and do this without thought, like join them up randomly. This is when the next step becomes a bit more challenging. You have to try and think from those links you've made, are there some questions that emerge? Are there projects you could make from that, angles you haven't thought of? And this could be something that you ask your students to do. You ask them to make the list of their interests, you provide the list of topics, get them to draw the lines randomly, and then think of the projects they could do based on that. So some examples of CREST projects for bronze, silver and gold. First of all, we've got here Rugby High School, which did CREST Bronze Award. And at the bottom for each of these, we have a link to a full case study. So if you want to read more about them, you can. So in this example, students chose their projects from the Bronze CREST Awards resource pack, Disease Development Diagnostics, which is available in the resource library and includes projects on periods, HPV and cervical cancer, endometriosis and global healthcare during pregnancy. Then another example we have here of a silver award is George. George attends a special school and he designed and built a working automatic biscuit dunker from Lego, which allows you to give the machine exact instructions on just how you like your biscuit dunked. And his project even made him a minor celebrity with an appearance on ITV News. And finally here we have Richard, who achieved a gold award for his project on finding the link between nutrition and mental health. In that case study, you can see the interview with Richard and sort of why he chose that project and how he found doing his CREST project has helped him, particularly in his interview for the apprenticeship. So a little bit on the support available to you while doing a CREST award. So I mentioned earlier that there is support for funding. So we offer Engage funding. Engage funding is currently open for applications until the 15th of October, and there will also be another application round in the spring term. So there's two types of Engage funding, the Engage grant. This provides £350 of grant money, which can be used on things such as equipment or materials to run the CREST Awards. And you would also get a voucher for up to £350 worth of CREST Award fees. So that covers the cost of ordering those certificates. Or there's Engage Simply CREST, which just is the voucher for those CREST Award fees. There is a QR code on this one that links just to that page all about Engage funding. And also, if you're interested in applying for Engage funding, I'd recommend coming to the webinar, which is on the 3rd of October, about application tips for Engage grants. We're also always here to help. So if you have any questions that we don't answer for you today, you can always get in touch at crest@britishscienceassociation.org. There is also the CREST Help Centre, which has lots of useful articles and FAQs. You can always access the free resources in the CREST resource library. And I've just shown an example here. That's a picture of just a subset of the Silver Award resources that we have. And there's also a link there to the CREST YouTube playlist with some video support. Finally, you may also be interested in looking at the STEM Ambassador Programme. You can request a STEM Ambassador, which would be a volunteer who could perhaps come in and help you if you were delivering, say, a Discovery Day, or they may want to be a mentor for students doing a higher level project, so somebody that student can ask questions about, who perhaps is an expert in that sort of project field, or in an industry that student is interested in. If you are looking to get support from your senior leadership team to run CREST and you're trying to persuade them, some things that might be useful to know. So CREST helps meet some of the Gatsby benchmarks, in particular benchmark 4, linking curriculum learning to careers, and benchmark 5, encounters with employers and employees. And that would be if you used that STEM ambassador, or you could make other connections for that sort of mentor role, reaching out to certain companies locally or universities. Another good point about CREST is that use for CVs and UCAS applications. It also gives you something good to showcase for Ofsted. And I've just linked at the bottom there our CREST Silver Impact Report from 2017, which shows that doing a CREST Silver Award can help improve grades and science uptake beyond GCSE. And that showed a half a grade improvement from students who successfully completed a Silver CREST Award or higher. And just another note that because CREST is cross-curricular and doesn't require specialist training, you can involve other staff members from across the school who may be interested in getting involved. Okay, so now it is time for your questions, if you have any.
Okay, sorry. Hello. I've run a CREST award before historically, but we're going about 12 years or so ago, and I didn't really have much to do with the admin. I more just ran the club, and then that sort of like the head of science dealt with it at the time. I'm now obviously revisiting it. I'd like to do a probably more of a design and build. I've already got an idea in mind. I want to try and make semi-aquatic vehicles which they can design and build with obviously some guidance, but the trying to sort of relay it in with sort of, I guess, circuitry components, electricity for science. So that's a big thing. But obviously, with some practical skills alongside technology inside of it. I've just been going through it in a couple of them. You mentioned about the criteria. Is there a fixed booklet for the Bronze Award to meet the criteria? I know you mentioned there was for Discovery. However, I'm just wondering, is there something for that, like a design and build one um, for the Bronze Award? And if that is the case, if you could direct me, that would be great. The second one I was just looking at was payment. Do we pay? Do we pay before? Do we pay afterwards? Like once we've got everything done, then do we send through and say this is what we've done? Just so I can get things in the correct order, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. First of all, that sounds like a really interesting project, and I think that's going to be great. So for those sort of bronze criteria, I think Susan has just popped in the chat the criteria guidance.
Right.
The other thing you will need for that is the student profile form. So I sort of mentioned there was that discovery passport.
Right. Okay.
For bronze, silver, and gold, there's a student profile form, which hopefully someone will link. There we go, soon. And then with that, it sort of asks, it lists the criteria and gives the students the option to say how they've met it, or if they've done some other work, so perhaps written up a report on what they made, or other, it could be a presentation, it could be anything around sort of how they've done that design and make project, then they can sort of link in there where they've met each criteria. In terms of the payment, that is done sort of at the end. So once you finish the project, you go onto the platform, you apply for the certificates, you sort of put in that small sample of the work, and then you are sent an invoice.
Because I know you've got the booklets, because I've done Discovery and Bronze historically, but it's like I said 10 years ago. I'm sure they had booklets for both, which we filled in, and that sort of made sure they met the criteria. Do they have that for Bronze, like a fixed booklet?
Yes. Like Carrie said, you can use the CREST student profile form, but
Right, that's the one. Profile
yeah,
form. Okay.
but for you could also use the bronze workbook. Actually, for the bronze level, we suggest or we encourage students to use the CREST Awards bronze workbook, just because it's like a more engaging version of the CREST student profile form. And if you use the bronze workbook, they don't have to like create a report or something. They could just use the bronze workbook to complete, as they complete the project, answer the questions in the bronze workbook. Then it makes it easier for you as a teacher to assess the work if they meet the each criteria on the workbook. So they are more likely to meet the criteria if they use the bronze workbook. And you could also use that as a sample work to upload in the your submission. And as Carrie said, regarding the payment, it is usually at the end of the submission process. So after you completed the application forms, uploaded your sample work, and what do you call this? You tick the criteria that were met from the project work. The last thing that you would do is to complete the invoice request, and then we will send you your invoice. After payment, we will process your certificate orders.
Okay, that's perfect. Just one bit of clarification. You mentioned the student profile form and the bronze workbook. Are they did you mean they were like the same thing? One was just set out for the other. Is that correct? So
yes,
I can
they're
on the workbook.
Yeah, they're basically the same. You could use the bronze workbook or the student profile form. But since we have the bronze workbook for bronze award levels, they're designed to be more, how do you call this, simplified. Compared to the student profile form, it's more for the higher levels. So I suggest you use the bronze workbook.
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Do we need mentors? So mentors are recommended for silver and gold. They're not required. I think Christine can tell me a little bit more about mentors.
Yes, I second what Carrie said. Mentors for silver and gold are not a requirement when you do or submit for CREST. although you can feel free to access the support of a mentor if that would help your students. And I think it's shown in one of the slides of Gary's that you can actually access support from mentors through the STEM ambassadors. So I think there's a link there as well.
And just to add, that mentor can be you. Some students put their teacher as their mentor, or it can be somebody external to the school. It's really just sort of anybody with more expertise on the project the student has done who can help support them with that project. Thank you very much for coming, guys. I hope that was helpful. And yeah, if you think of questions later, do just email us and we'll be happy to help.